Good evening, all. So let's begin with today's session. Look at the first question. With reference to Jantar Mantar observatories in India, consider the following statements. The first statement says, Jantar Mantars were built in 18th century by Maharaja Savai Jai Singh II for the astronomical observations. Absolutely correct. Second statement says, Jaipur Jantar Mantar is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and houses the Samrat Yantra, the world's largest sundial. Again correct. Third statement says Jantar Mantar observatories were constructed at Jaipur, Delhi, Ujjain, Varanasi and Mathura. Again correct. Fourth statement says all the Jantar Mantar observatories continue to function with the same level of astronomical accuracy today. This statement is incorrect, right? They are affected by the urbanization and like deformation. So which of these statements given above are correct? Correct answer would be 1, 2 and 3 means A for Ahmedabad would be the correct answer. So look at the explanation part and why we picked up this question. National Mathematics Day and the double life of the Jantar Mantar. So recently National Mathematics Day was observed, right, on December 22nd. So yaad rakhega 22nd of December is observed as the National Mathematics Day, which is the birth anniversary of Indian mathematician Srinivasan Ramanujan, right? So these observatories exist in 5 locations: Jaipur, Delhi, Ujjain, Varanasi and Mathura. And these observatories have reduced accuracy today due to modern urban construction, right? Chaliye, now let's move on to the next question. So look at the question number 2. With reference to elephant conservation in India, consider the following statements. The first statement says, India hosts more than 60% of the world wild Asian elephant population. Correct? Second statement says the Asian elephant is listed as vulnerable. No, not vulnerable, endangered. So second statement is correct. आगे जाने की जरूरत ही नहीं है. No need to read further. Look at the third statement. Project Elephant was launched in 1992 as a centrally sponsored scheme under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. This statement is correct. Fourth statement says Project Rehab uses bee fences to reduce human-elephant conflict. This one is absolutely correct. Question is, which of these statements given above are correct? So correct answer would be 1, 3 and 4. So A for Ahmedabad would be the correct answer, right? So look at the explanation part. India hosts over 60% of the world wild Asian elephant and it is endangered, right? Not vulnerable. And the Project Rehab implemented by the KVIC uses bee fences to deter elephants and to reduce the human-animal conflict. So look at the next question, question number 3. With reference to the National Tiger Conservation Authority NTCA, consider the following statements. It was set up in 2005 following the recommendation of the Tiger Task Force. Absolutely correct. Second statement says NTCA was created through an amendment to the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Again correct. Third statement says no alteration or denotification of a tiger reserve can be done without the approval of both the NTCA and the National Board for Wildlife. Absolutely correct. The next statement says the Inspector General of Forest in charge of the Project Tiger act as the ex officio member secretary of the NTCA. Which of these statements given is oblique are correct? Correct answer is all. So all these statements are correct here, means D for Delhi would be the correct answer. Now let's move on to the explanation part. So NTCA, yaad rakhega, it is chaired by the Union Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change. This is the additional information, right? Also remember that Project Tiger, it was launched in 1973 by the Indira Gandhi government. Clear? Now let's move on to the next question. So look at the question number 4. With reference to the Viksit Bharat Shiksha Dishthan Bill 2025, consider the following statements. The first statement says the bill seeks to subsume the UGC, AICTE and the NCTE into a single overreaching body. Absolutely correct. Second statement says the proposed regulatory council under the bill will have the power to disburse grants to higher education institutions. No, that would be the discretion of Ministry of Education only, not the proposed body. So second statement is eliminated. So C is eliminated and B is also eliminated. Look at the statement number 3. The bill brings institutions of national importance such as IIT, IIMs and NITs within its regulatory ambit. This one is correct. The fourth statement says the medical and the legal education institutions will also be regulated under the proposed framework. No, that's not correct. Clear? So this is not correct. Correct answer would be option 1 and 3. So A for Ahmedabad would be the correct answer. Now let's move on to the explanation part. The Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhishthan Bill, it's a vision driven by the National Education Policy 2020. So it implements the vision of the NEP 2020. It places the students at the center of higher education reforms, promotes flexibility, interdisciplinary learning, quality research and innovation, right? Further देख लेते हैं एक बार स्ट्रक्चर इसका क्या प्रपोज बॉडी का स्ट्रक्चर है. सो लुक एट दिस वन. द प्रपोज स्ट्रक्चर, द विकसित भारत शिक्षा अधिष्ठान, there would be a non-executive chairperson plus 12 members, right? Plus 12 members. तीन स्ट्रक्चर्स हैं. अब यहां सबसे पहले we have the standard council with the president plus 14 members. Then we have the regulatory council, president plus 14 members again, and then we have the accreditation council जिसका काम इंस्टीट्यूशंस को एक्रेडाइट करना होगा. सो एक्रेडिएशन का काम है इसका, तो एक्रेडिएशन काउंसिल, देन रेगुलेटरी काउंसिल एंड देन दी स्टैंडर्ड काउंसिल. सभी में मेंबर्स बिल्कुल सेम है, प्रेसिडेंट प्लस 14 मेंबर्स. क्लियर? सो दैट इज द प्रपोज स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ द विकसित भारत शिक्षा अधिष्ठान विद द नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव चेयरपर्सन प्लस 12 members, right? Now let's move on to the next question. The Man Who Knew Infinity. It is a biographical work based on the life of. Correct answer is Srinivasan Ramanujan. So B for Bombay is the correct answer. Now let's move on to the question number 6. With reference to the Marpol Convention, consider the following statements. The first statement says, it is administered by the UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program. This statement is incorrect here. Why? Because it is regulated by the IMO, International Maritime Organization, and not by the UNEP. So the first statement is incorrect here. Second statement says, Annex 6 of Marpol deals with the air pollution from ships, including the SOx, NOx emissions. Absolutely correct. The third statement says India has ratified all the 6 annexes of the Marpol Convention. So there are total 6 annexes under this convention. This is absolutely correct. India has ratified all the conventions here. The next statement says Marpol applies only to the accidental marine pollution and not to operational discharges. This is incorrect. It applies in both the areas, right? Accidental as well as the operational discharges of pollutants. So question is, which of these statements given above are incorrect? तो यहाँ पे incorrect पूछा हुआ है. So first and fourth both are incorrect. So A for Ahmedabad would be the correct answer. Always remember, जो भी question की demand है, you need to encircle that. So यहाँ पे अगर incorrect पूछा है तो you need to encircle that so that you can derive the correct answer. Now let's move on to the explanation part. Why we picked up this question? There's a reason. So look at this one. It was recently published in the Hindu. How is the shipping industry tackling the emissions? So अभी हाल ही में 83rd सेशन हुआ था IMO का, इंटरनेशनल मैरीटाइम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का. इस वजह से हमने इस क्वेश्चन को फ्रेम किया, right? So do remember that Marpol, it covers both accidental and the operational pollution such as the routine discharge of oil, sewage and garbage. Now let's move on to the next question. So look at the question number 7. With reference to compensatory afforestation fund management, CAMPA fund, consider the following statements. The first statement says CAMPA is a statutory body created under the Compensatory Afforestation Fund Act of 2016. Absolutely correct. Second statement says it was originally constituted pursuant to the T.N. Godavarman versus Union of India case. It was a landmark judgment of Supreme Court. Absolutely correct. Second statement is also correct. CAMPA funds are capped in Consolidated Fund of India. No, that's not correct. Third statement, there is a catch. It is capped under the public account, not under the Consolidated Fund of India. So third statement is incorrect. Statement number 4 says 90% of CAMPA funds are transferred to the state and the union territory. So there's a division of 90:10. So 90 goes with the state and the UTs and 10 is capped with the union. Absolutely correct, right? One above are incorrect. यहाँ पे incorrect पूछा हुआ है. So B for Bombay would be the correct answer, means only 3. Now let's move on to the explanation part. So only 3 would be the correct answer. You can see here CAMPA is a statutory body under the CAMPA Act of 2016. It originated from the Supreme Court's T.N. Godavarman case 1995 and was formally institutionalized later, right? So CAMPA funds are capped in the public account of India and they are the non-lapsable funds, right? Parliamentary approval required नहीं होता है यहाँ से money withdraw करने के लिए. And 90% of funds go to the state and the UTs and 10% is retained by the center. चलिए, now let's move on to the next question. So Syria shares its international land boundary with which of the following countries? Recently, America launched an airstrike on Syria. So that's why we framed this question. So look at these statements. Turkey, Lebanon, Iraq, Jordan. इजिप्ट के साथ लैंड बॉर्डर नहीं है, right? So 1, 2, 3 and 4 should be the correct answer. Select the correct answer using the code given below. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, that should be the correct answer. So A for Ahmedabad would be the correct answer, 1, 2, 3 and 4, right? इसका कोई भी border इजिप्ट के साथ में नहीं है. So now let's move on to the explanation part. So you can see here in the map, this is Syria with the capital Damascus. So Syria forms its border with Turkey, with Iraq, with Jordan, with Lebanon, with Israel as well, but not with Egypt. Clear? Now let's move on to the next question. Question number 9 is there. So with reference to the Competition Commission of India, CCI, consider the following statements. The first statement says, Competition Commission of India is a statutory body set up under the Competition Act of 2002. Absolutely correct. Second statement says, CCI functions under the administrative control of the Ministry of Finance. This is incorrect. It works under the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, not under the Ministry of Finance. So second statement is ruled out. तो सेकंड स्टेटमेंट अगर रूल्ड आउट है, करेक्ट आंसर क्या होगा? ए फॉर अहमदाबाद. एलिमिनेशन से निकल गया ये. लास्ट स्टेटमेंट फिर भी हम देख लेते हैं. द कॉम्पिटिशन कमीशन ऑफ इंडिया हैज बोथ द रेगुलेटरी एज वेल एज द क्वाजी जुडिशियल फंक्शंस. एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट. व्हाई? बिकॉज द कॉम्पिटिशन कमीशन ऑफ इंडिया enjoys the power of the CPC, Code of Civil Procedure 1908. Therefore, it is a quasi judicial body, right? So now let's move on to the explanation part, right? It performs the regulatory functions and the quasi-judicial functions like inquiries, imposing penalties and all. याद रखिएगा, it was set up in March 2009 under the Competition Act of 2002. Now let's move on to the next question. So question number 10, with reference to the tundra ecosystem, consider the following statements. The first statement says, it is characterized by the presence of permafrost beneath the soil surface. Absolutely correct. There is always a subsoil layer of permafrost. Absolutely correct. Second statement says it receives higher annual precipitation than the tropical rainforest. This is incorrect. It is far lower than the tropical rainforest. In fact, the situation is quite similar to the desert area. The precipitation is very low. Third statement says it acts as a significant carbon sink due to the slow decomposition of organic matter. अब जो temperature है that remains far below than the other regions of the world, right? सो ऑब्वियसली जो डीकम्पोजिशन का जो साइकिल है, जो उसका स्पीड है, वो क्या हो जाएगा? वो स्लो डाउन हो जाएगा. तो यहाँ पे कार्बन सिंक आपको देखने मिलेगा, सिग्निफिकेंट कार्बन सिंक. क्वेश्चन इज विच ऑफ दी स्टेटमेंट्स गिवन अबव इज ऑब्लिक आर करेक्ट? करेक्ट स्टेटमेंट पूछा हुआ है. सो 1 and 3 both are correct. A for Ahmedabad would be the correct answer. Second statement eliminated है, right? Now let's move on to the explanation part. So you can see here why we framed this question, because an article was recently published in Down to Earth regarding the tundra fires. इसी वजह से हमने इसको पिक किया हुआ है. So you can see here, tundra regions have permafrost, a permanently frozen subsoil layer. Then tundra receives very low precipitation, often comparable to the deserts. Then the cold temperatures slow decomposition, making tundra a major carbon storage zone, right? So you can see this explanation में इसको थोड़ा सा और expand किया हमने. So the world has 3 types of tundra: Arctic, Alpine and Antarctic, right? Now let's move on to the next question. This is going to be the last question of today's session. With reference to the Udanti Sita Nadi Tiger Reserve, consider the following statements. First statement says, it is formed by merging the Udanti and Sita Nadi wildlife sanctuaries. Absolutely correct. Second statement says, the Mahanadi River forms the main drainage system of the reserve. Absolutely correct. This tiger reserve is situated in the state of Chhattisgarh, right? Where? In the state of Chhattisgarh. The third statement says it provides a forest corridor connecting the Indravati Tiger Reserve. Absolutely correct. Indravati Tiger Reserve is also situated in the state of Chhattisgarh. Although Indravati Tiger Reserve forms its border with Maharashtra as well, right? And why we call it the Indravati Tiger Reserve? Because it is named after the Indravati River, and Indravati River is the tributary of Godavari River. Do remember? And Mahanadi River जो है basically it flows through this Udanti Sita Nadi Wildlife Sanctuary, and Mahanadi River जो है it flows in the state of Chhattisgarh and then in the state of Odisha. Do remember? In fact, इस पे एक major dam भी बना हुआ है, Hirakud Dam, where in the state of Odisha. चलिए, now let's move on to the explanation part. The reserve was created by combining Udanti and Sita Nadi Wildlife Sanctuary. Absolutely correct. Mahanadi is the main river. Udanti, Sita Nadi, Indravati and the Peri as tributaries. Clear? अच्छा, आपको rivers की tributaries का knowledge होना बेहद जरूरी है. And it connects via forest divisions to Indravati Tiger Reserve, forming an important ecological corridor. दिस वॉज द लास्ट क्वेश्चन ऑफ दिस सेशन। मिलेंगे अपने नेक्स्ट सेशन में दोस्तों। बाय बाय, टेक केयर, जय हिंद।